Wow, what a fantastic group of attendees. Thank you so much to everyone who flew to come here. We have an excellent venue here in Cambridge, gorgeous Jesus College. And this is the inaugural Post-Quantum Ethereum Workshop. I'm hoping that it's going to be extremely productive, extremely fun, and we've actually planned for success because we've pre-booked for 2026. So we have 44 rooms for next year in October. So hopefully most of you can stay on the premises, and I'm told the rooms are excellent. Okay, so post-quantum security for Ethereum has been a long time coming. So this ETH research post from May 2028 introduced BLS signatures as a candidate for Ethereum, and the very first sentence of this post kind of highlights that BLS would need to be replaced and that Stark-based aggregation is a possibility. And back then, when Vitalik was asked, what is your vision for Ethereum 3.0, his answer was Starks, and lots of Starks, because they're very flexible and powerful. They solve a lot of our problems, including post-quantum security. So in this talk, I'd like to do three things. First of all, I'd like to share some of the high-level theses that have kind of shaped the path that we've gone down from a research and development perspective for post-quantum signatures. And then I'd like to share a snapshot of where we're at right now. What is the cryptographic stack that we have for our post-quantum signatures? And then I'll share a few words about the workshop. Okay, so 4 theses that I'd like to share today. So the first one is aggregation. In my opinion, aggregation is an absolute must for the whole blockchain industry, not just for Ethereum consensus layer. And I also think that snarks are going to be required for aggregation. And theses 3 and 4 are related to snarks. We want them to be end-to-end formally verified, that's thesis number 4, and more likely than not, hash-based signatures are the best construction that we could hope for. Okay, aggregation. So there's been a lot of progress recently with NIST standardizing post-quantum signatures, but I would argue that this is not solving the problem that we have. We need to be able to aggregate signatures, and there's 2 key reasons. The first reason is that we're pushing through a lot of signatures through our blockchain. So today, on Ethereum 1, we're pushing through 2.7 thousand signatures per second. And I'm hoping that with the upcoming upgrades to Ethereum, I'm hoping we can get to at least 16,000 signatures per second. So imagine if you were to verify these signatures individually, each one of them, let's say, takes a millisecond, you wouldn't be able to keep up with the sheer volume of signatures. So signature aggregation is required at the consensus layer, but I would also argue that they're required at the application layer. So one of the features of post-quantum signatures is that they're at least 10 times larger than the curve-based signatures. And it's kind of inconceivable or unacceptable for all of the blockchains that we know and love to just suffer a 10x degradation of performance. Imagine if Bitcoin went from 3 transactions per second to 0.3 transactions per second. It would be completely unacceptable. And actually here we have Michal from Blockstream, and I'm hoping that a lot of the technology that we're building here will be adopted very broadly across the whole blockchain ecosystem. Now the second thesis that I'm presenting here is that we most likely need snarks, specifically recursive snarks, to do aggregation. And the 3 key reasons are collaborative aggregation, pipeline aggregation, and flexible aggregation. We're very picky on the aggregation. So one of the things that we want is the ability for mutually untrusted aggregators to work together and collaborate towards a final aggregate. And one of the things that this unlocks is parallelism. So we can imagine, for example, parallel subnets where partial aggregation happens, and then the final aggregation happens at later stages. And it's also very important to have censorship resistance. So you can imagine a malicious aggregator censoring some of the signatures, and we want we want it to be permissionless for anyone to enrich the censored aggregates with the censored transactions in order to form uncensored aggregates. And this is especially important in the context of proof of stake, where we want everyone to have the option to vote and not be censored from voting. Another property that we'd like is called pipeline aggregation. So it's this idea that if you're downloading signatures on the wire, you want to start the aggregation process as quickly as possible so that you can do continuous aggregation and you don't have to wait until you've downloaded the last byte of the last transaction. And flexible aggregation, one of the things that we want is to be able to aggregate across multiple messages, not just across multiple signers. So in the context of proof of stake, there's multiple forks that different attesters might be voting for, and in the context of the application layer, every user is like signing a different transaction and therefore a different message. And then a final nice to have is that it would be very nice for our aggregation to have the possibility to turn on zero knowledge and to maybe have a little bit of ancillary logic that goes around the signature aggregation. And maybe the best example that I have in mind here is this proposal called privacy wormholes, which is basically giving Ethereum L1 privacy in the same style of Zcash. And you can think of the ancillary logic as being verifying some sort of nullifier similar to what Zcash does. Okay, so if you accept that we need aggregation for blockchains, and you accept that we need snarks, what kind of snarks should we pick? And the thesis that we have basically is to go for hash-based signatures for three fundamental reasons. The first one is security, second one simplicity, third one elegance. Let me start with elegance because it's very easy to state, which is that imagine if we were to build the entirety of Ethereum layer 1 with just one building block. Isn't that like a cool idea? Very, very elegant. Security is similar. Imagine if we were to build all of Ethereum on just the security of one single hash function. That is a very lean cryptographic assumption. It's a very minimal assumption, and you don't need additional hardness assumptions like lattices. And then simplicity. It turns out that hash-based constructions nowadays are well understood. They're very modular. We have a very clean way to think about them in the pure random oracle model or quantum random oracle model. And also the hash-based signatures, they're just very simple, hash chains and Merkle trees. And hash-based snarks is basically just fancy Merkle trees. And there's also some considerations related to like practical considerations. So the number one contender for post-quantum signatures other than hash-based is lattices. And here we haven't seen the kind of maturity and adoption that we've seen with hash-based signatures. And one of the points as well that I wanted to stress is related to performance. So one of the biggest selling points of lattice-based signatures is the fact that they're a little bit smaller than the hash-based counterparts. But in the context of aggregation, it doesn't really matter as much what the size of the unaggregated signatures are, because the only thing that goes on-chain is the aggregate. And these off-chain messages that are just gossiped among peers, it's okay if they're 2x, 5x bigger than the hash-based counterparts. Okay, and then the final thesis is that Ethereum is today securing $1 trillion. In the future, it's plausibly going to be securing trillions of dollars. We want to have relatively high confidence that there's no bugs in what we're enshrining, and end-to-end formal verification seems to be the best strategy to go forward. And what we want is to formally verify everything. The mathematics, including the proximity gaps theorems, the cryptography, including the soundness of the PCS, the PIOP, the circuits, as well as the correctness of the code, the reference implementation in Rust of the signature verifiers. And I'm actually relatively bullish that we can pull this off. This has never been done before, but I think we can pull it off for several reasons. One is that we have a very modular stack, as we'll see, and we can incrementally bootstrap with bite-sized chunks and eventually, hopefully, build up to the whole system. And we're also putting a lot of resources towards formal verification. So Alex Hicks is leading a $20 million program. This money is to be spent over 3 years to accelerate the tooling of formal verification. And we also have AI, which is promising to help us do a lot of the grunt work, hopefully over the next few years. So those were the post-quantum theses, basically shaping the direction. And next, I'd like to share a little bit more detail about the stack. But any questions so far? Happy to take them. Otherwise, we can take them at the end. Okay, let's continue then. So, post-quantum stack. So, our stack is basically made out of 2 parts. We have the leaf signature, which is hash-based, and that's the signature that the attesters would be generating. And then we have this aggregation machinery with the snarks. Of course, we're starting with a hash function. It's a snark-friendly hash function, so it's relative to a field. With the hash function, we're building what's called a one-time signature scheme, an OTS. And then once we have a one-time signature scheme, we can easily build a many-time signature scheme by concatenating multiple of these one-time signatures under a Merkle tree. And the specifics that we have here is Poseidon 2 as the industry standard snark-friendly hash function, very much trusted, very much scrutinized, and Koala Bear as arguably the most performant field that you could pair with Poseidon 2 because of the fact that it has an S-box with only a power of 3. For the one-time signature and for the signature, we're going with Winternet and XMSS, specifically ZK-optimized versions of Winternet and XMSS. And that is work that has been done by the Ethereum Foundation to optimize these schemes. And then for the snarks, what we're suggesting is to use WER because it has the smallest proofs that we know of for the PCS, as well as Super Spartan for the PIOP because it's a simple, elegant, and powerful proof system. We've built our own custom ISA, very, very simple, very minimalistic, with just 8 instructions, somewhat largely inspired by Cairo. And we also have a custom aggregation program that is capable of verifying and multiple XMSS signatures, but also recursively verifying the proofs so that we can have recursive aggregation. And that's a whole multi-signature scheme. And what we like to do, at least I like to do, is to add the lean prefix in front of these things. So for example, the lean ISA, the lean SIG, lean multisig, and that's basically because it falls under the umbrella of lean Ethereum and lean consensus, which is one of the big future upgrades that is being proposed for Ethereum. Now, one of the amazing things is that this whole stack, we're hoping to be able to spec it in about 1,000 lines of Python code. And here we're talking about the cryptographically relevant part, which is the verifier that subsumes the essence of the signature. And part of the reason we have conviction that this is possible is because we have a draft specification for the first 6 layers all the way to Super Spartan, and that's about 500 lines of code. And so one of the things that we've tried to strive for is just absolute simplicity and minimality and overall reducing complexity. Now, if you were to zoom out and look at the broader stack, there's 2 more layers that you could add. One is the peer-to-peer layer that the clients are working on. And then there's the clients themselves, which is the software that's going to wrap all of this for the post-quantum devnets and testnets, and eventually mainnet. Now, one of the things that we've been working on, well, Emil has been working on, I guess, for the last 6 weeks, is to improve the performance of aggregation. This is one of the last things that we need to do to de-risk this direction. And we've basically roughly had a 6x improvement over the last 5 weeks, and we need another 6x improvement to get to where we want from a performance standpoint. And we believe that we can get there given known optimizations. Okay, final word on the post-quantum workshop before I open it up for questions. So one of the things that I want to stress is that even though we have this very exciting North Star that is going to play out over multiple years, we want to be kind of nurturing public goods as we go along. And there's a lot of public goods out there, and we're basically hoping to lift all boats. And a lot of the attendees in this room are creators and nurturers of these public goods. So for example, we have Angus, who discovered Koala Bear. We have Dmitry, who co-authored Poseidon. We have Elon and Giacomo, co-authors of Whir. We have Ulrich, sole author of Logup. We have all of the authors of leanSig, Dmitry, Michal, and Benedict. We have Emil, who designed and implemented the Lean ISA. We have the maintainers, Angus and Thomas of Plonky3, and we also have the creator and maintainer of ArcLib, Quang, one of the formal verification libraries that we'll be leaning into. So what we've done is that we've split up the attendees into 4 different groups. Post-quantum DevNet, these are mostly client developers. They're not cryptography experts. And then we have more on the cryptography side, the theory, the implementation, and the formal verification. And for each of these groups, we're going to have a coordinator as well as a technical lead. So on the left is the technical lead, and then the coordinator. So these people are your first point of contact, and they'll be helping facilitate over the next few days. So one of my last slides, I want to try and highlight some of the open problems that we'd like some of you guys to start thinking about. So for the post-quantum DevNet group, one of the goals is to try and have some sort of a demo of the very first DevNet, where multiple clients are talking to each other, they're signing messages, and I'm also hoping that we can make progress on the peer-to-peer topology for the aggregations with the various subnets. There's all sorts of a design space. Camille will be talking about that. For the post-quantum theory, one of the biggest open problems in the space is the proximity gaps conjectures. Can we make progress there? The Ethereum Foundation is putting forward $1 million, but we don't have the rules of the prize yet. So hopefully we can make progress on setting the rules. And there's also some potentially low-hanging fruit in trying to further optimize the Winternet signatures, specifically the encoding part, which is now no longer the bottleneck versus hashing. For the implementers, 2 big open problems are: one, are we on the right path with recursion, with the lean virtual machine? The industry hasn't yet settled and converged on one design. There's all sorts of different ideas floating about. Can we pick the best ideas? And another valuable thing to work on is, can we upstream our implementation of Whir up to Plonky3 so that the whole ecosystem can start making use of Plonky3? I know that Plonky3 is like the hot new thing that everyone's starting to implement. I know that SP1, RISC0, OpenVM, and others are embracing Plonky3. Sorry, Whir, it is the new hot thing, and can we help accelerate this public good? And for formal verification, we have a long road in front of us in multiple years, and so can we have a credible plan to doing all of the formal verification that we need? And also, can we try and accelerate the development of ArcLib and hopefully nerd snipe a few of you in this room or watching the recording online to help with the formal verification effort. So this is the agenda over the next 3 days. For this morning, we're going to have about 10 different speakers give very short talks, providing a little bit of context on the layer of the stack that they're working on and highlighting some of the open problems. We're going to be meeting every day at 9 o'clock. Doors will open at 8:30, and we'll be closing every day with a quick debrief at 5 o'clock. And there will also be a group photo, which we might move slightly earlier so that everyone can make it, including those who are leaving slightly earlier. Final slide. Tonight we have an opening dinner. We're doing something a little unusual, which is we're punting to the restaurant. Very Cambridge thing to do, I guess. And the closing dinner on day 3 is a very, very unique thing. So I've been in Cambridge for 18 years, and I've never done this. So we're basically having dinner in the Cambridge Union debating chamber. I don't know how we'll pull this off. But yeah, it's very unique. And we're also going to have an exciting speaker giving a closing speech. So that is going to be a local Cambridge entrepreneur. He created, over 10 years ago, a quantum error correction company. And his company now has 150 employees. And they're like they're the world leader in quantum error correction. And so Steve will be giving us a snapshot of the progress on post-quantum computing, on quantum computing, which I understand is very exciting. And that's it. Thank you. Okay, so we have a few microphones for anyone who has any questions about the workshop.
I know we shouldn't trust any deadline you give, but what's the timeline?
So when I first introduced what was called the beam chain about a year ago at DevConnect, the timeline slide that I presented was my most hated slide ever. Because the timelines were so stretched into the future. It basically had a 4-year development plan, and we would launch like late 2028 or early 2029. Now, the good news is that a lot of incremental updates are happening on Ethereum between now and then. And the other piece of good news is that the timelines haven't changed. I think we're still very much on track with what I initially presented. I think a lot of the time will be spent on the formal verification on one side, and a lot of this time will also be spent on testing. And the reason is that it's going to be a very big upgrade to Ethereum on a similar scale to what we did with proof of stake. We're going to have many different clients involved, potentially 10 different clients. And so, I kind of allocated a whole 2 years just for testing. But I think, a lot of the exciting, fast-paced development is happening right now. And now is basically an opportunity to make a big contribution to the overall design, solidify it over the next kind of year, maybe a year and a half, and then after a year and a half, basically only work on quality through formal verification and testing.
So if the proximity prize does not get solved in 4 years, then what do you do? Do you rely on conjectures or not?
Yeah, that's a good question. So one of the advantages of our modular design is that we have the 2 parts. We have the leaf signatures and we have the aggregation. And really what we want to do is make sure to never change the leaf signatures. That should be signatures that we have for the next centuries, if not millennia. And the nice thing about those leaf signatures is that they're provably secure in the standard model, and we can kind of aim for 128 bits of security without any conjectures. One possible way forward is basically to, if we need the extra performance juice, would be to rely on conjectured security, and then basically at some point in the future, either prove the conjecture, or if the conjecture is disproven, kind of increase the parameters, and that would be like a relatively simple hard fork that again wouldn't change the leaf signatures. Or if we don't need the juice, which would be the best outcome possible, we just launch from day one without relying on the conjecture.
What's the state of proving Poseidon to strength?
So the next speaker, literally after me, will be talking about Poseidon. What I can say is that the Ethereum Foundation is putting a lot of effort into Poseidon. So just this year, in 2025, I believe we organized 3 different workshops, and we're organizing a 4th workshop very, very, very soon. I think we've given maybe half a dozen grants to world experts, cryptanalysts. And the other kind of cool story, kind of coincidence, is that when Satoshi picked SHA-256, SHA-256 was 8 years old. When Vitalik picked Keccak, Keccak was 8 years old. And in 3 years' time, when we plan to launch Lean Ethereum, Poseidon 2 will be 8 years old. So kind of 8 years old is kind of the baking time, I guess, for these hash functions. And not only are we accelerating and putting as much resources on cryptanalysis, but there's also this very natural bug bounty program through billions of dollars being secured today on rollups, ZK rollups, that use Poseidon. So I'm hoping that by the time we launch, we'll have hundreds of billions of dollars secured by Poseidon, and it will be seen as a trusted hash function.
So what is the expected performance or like desired performance of this leanVM, and how many GPUs do you expect people to throw at it to be able to prove?
Right, great question. So Ethereum today doesn't rely on GPUs at all. Like all of the validator nodes are CPU nodes. And the best outcome is that CPUs are sufficient to do the aggregation that we want. And it looks like we can get there. So the goal that we're trying to reach is a laptop CPU doing 1,000 XMSS signatures per second. And when you do the parallelization across subnets, that is sufficient to reach the performance targets that we have. So the answer is basically 0 GPUs. Now, it is possible that in practice, someone will be using a spare GPU that they have, and they will get 10x the performance that we have on the CPU, and they will plausibly be able to single-handedly prove all of Ethereum on this one GPU. But we're aiming for the lowest possible barrier to entry, which is just the laptop CPU, and specifically 1,000 signatures per second. Now, there is another performance metric, which is how fast can we do the aggregation of aggregates, and that's really what we're looking at is 2-to-1 recursive verification. And my hope is that over the next few years we can get this significantly under 100 milliseconds. But as of right now, kind of the aggressive target is, let's say, 100 milliseconds. But yeah, I think, we've seen that over the years, SNOCs just generally get better, and getting that under 100 milliseconds would be a really amazing outcome.
So there's a leanVM and a lean ISA, and they verify the leaf signatures.
Yes.
Is a two-part question. Is the leanVM intended for other applications as well? And if not, have you considered just basic circuits for leaf verification?
Right. So the ISA is designed to be like very flexible. It has general purpose instructions like add, multiply, a memory instruction, a jump instruction, and then basically a hashing instruction. And the hope is that we can build a general purpose virtual machine for any hash-based cryptography. So it doesn't have to be XMSS signatures. It could be Sphinx signatures. And my personal hope is that we do such a good job on quality, meaning security, end-to-end form verification, and performance, that it becomes the de facto standard that all the blockchains use, just in the same way that ECDSA is the standard that every blockchain uses. And my hope is that even the Bitcoiners will like it. Right? The technology will speak for itself. And actually, I have a slide here for the Bitcoiners. So here's the rough design space. So let's assume that we only have one CPU for aggregation. We can either have stateless signatures, so those are the signatures that you would want at the application layer, or the stateful signatures, which are the ones that we're using on Ethereum. And if you go from stateless to stateful, you get a 10x performance boost. And then on the choice of hash, you can either have a SNark-friendly hash, which is Poseidon, or a SNark-unfriendly hash, which would be SHA. And again, you get a 10x performance boost. Now, what I expect would happen is that the Bitcoiners would want this square, right? They would want to keep the hash function that they have, SHA, and they would want it to be stateless. And you would only be able to do 10 transactions per second, 10 signatures per second of aggregation, but that's fine because Bitcoin only does 3 transactions per second. So we would use here this quadrant for proof of stake. And then if you move to a world where you have one single GPU, then you get a 10x performance boost. And now you can imagine, for example, having the rollups, the high performance blockchains like Solana using leanVM as well for the post-quantum signatures.
So the reason we have a leanVM is because aggregation is non-trivial for hash functions, but what happens if we have folding like Neo that solves the issue? We don't need the leanVM anymore.
Yeah, great question. So folding is one of the possible answers to alternatives to recursive SNarks. There's, I guess, a couple of things that I'll say. The first one is that folding is not as friendly to collaborative aggregation. And the reason is that you have to pass these witnesses in addition to proofs, which will significantly increase the proof size. And so now the cost of collaboration is just much more communication. So I think we need to wait and see what the concrete numbers are to see whether or not folding is a possibility or a non-starter. The other thing that I'll mention is that even though folding can help in certain ways, it doesn't necessarily mean that it would completely remove the virtual machine. Like, you still need to verify, for example, that the folding was done correctly. And if you want to have short witnesses, you might need a little state machine or virtual machine to basically reduce the size of the witnesses. So imagine, for example, that a signature, you're verifying 100 hashes. The witness for 100 hashes is 100 times larger than for just one single signature. And so you can imagine only wanting to fold a single hash, but then that means that you need to have a state machine in order to keep track of that. So a lot of researchers are looking into folding. We're in touch with them. But at this point in time, I'm very slightly bearish on folding, relative to recursion at least.
Question about recursive snarks and their security, because they inherently have this heuristic step in the security proofs where we instantiate around the
Yes.
work. Do we feel okay with that? Do we want to look more into it? And
Yes.
I feel like maybe we can't avoid it.
Yeah, great question. So a couple answers here. The first one is that we are looking into it. We've given grants to researchers, some of them in this room, to look into the security of recursive SNARKs. The other thing that I'll say is that going back to the separation of concerns between the leaf signature and the aggregation, we want the leaf signature to be like World War III proof, like it's going to live for the rest of humanity, never changes. If for whatever reason, and that's provable in the standard model under collision resistance, and there's no recursive recursion, and so plausibly, if we find some sort of an attack, for example, there's a Mitri and Lev's paper, right, like that found this very specific edge case, like potentially we could just fix the edge case by just changing the way we do recursion. I believe maybe Elon had like a new paper where they do like proof of work or something. Like, I think we would want to have as much of the mitigations as we can, given our best understanding. But yeah, for sure, it is one of the gaps that we would likely have when we launch. Okay, final question, and then we'll have Antonio talk about Poseidon.
Hi, thanks. I just have a really quick question. At a high level, in the Stark roadmap, do you have some sort of milestone from the perspective of sort of putting out like a real-time proving implementation, or some kind of like performance benchmark that you are sort of laser focused on, that all of this research converges to, or something like that, just to understand sort of how far away we are from the realization of such an implementation?
Yeah. I mean, so we have this lean multisig repo. We can share the link in the Telegram chat. There's like various graphs that keep track of performance. This is one of the key ones, like how many signatures can we aggregate per second? We believe we can get to 1,000 signatures per second, but if we can get to 2,000, 3,000, 10,000 on the CPU, that would be amazing. Now there's all sorts of places where we can squeeze performance. So, for example, for whir, if we can prove the proximity gaps conjecture, that does a 2x squeeze, at least on the recursion. For the winternits, this is going to be an open problem that we will discuss. If we can improve the encodings, we potentially can squeeze a 2x there as well. I just heard from someone in this room that he's working on an improvement potentially to whir, a very significant improvement. I don't know, that would be fantastic outcome. Maybe we'll have better PIOPs and we can squeeze a few percentage points here as well. There's a lot of room. This is work that literally is a few months old. Emil has been a grantee at the Ethereum Foundation for only 3 months, and there's probably some low-hanging fruits to be had here. If you're a compiler expert, right, like what Emil implemented, he created a new language and a new compiler that compiles down to lean ISA. There's probably a lot of juice to squeeze to generate better lean ISA bytecode for the recursion. So overall, I'm just very, very optimistic that the performance will be good enough, but we still need to do the work, and it's quite exciting work. Okay, last question. Go ahead.
So, are you worried about the recent attacks on VHM here? All this?
Am I
thinking of some counter measures?
Okay, well, this is a question for you.
I am worried.
You are worried. Okay, interesting. Then let's talk about it during the workshop. Okay, thank you guys. And Antonio, the floor is yours.